their brain starts going through and they just don't know. And we thought, you know what, 15-year anniversary of the company, been 15 years, a little more than that. Thought, let's pull back the curtain and hear from you guys from the beginning. So I'm going to dig right in, Mark. First question, what made you and Cindy decide to start It Works Global?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I look back, and it's fun to look back 15 years now. And, you know, everyone has a perspective. They look through different lenses, they see things, and it's really cool to come in our office and talk to people because everybody came from a different background or different journey to get here today. And, you know, no different for Cindy and I. I had taught school, I was coaching basketball, and you know, I was really getting stuck. I was getting stuck in what I was at. I wanted more. Cindy's desire was to be at home with the kids. I wanted her to be able to do that, but you know, there'd be things that the kids wanted that I couldn't provide. You know, nothing worse than your daughter saying, "Daddy," and using the daddy word, and couldn't do it. So we actually got introduced to this industry. And like many of you, our goal wasn't that big in the beginning. You know, it literally was $500 a month to really help our budget out. And we stepped in really slow. You know, we weren't for sure about this. I'm teaching and coaching, and you know, we hooked in with a company, and we became top 10 distributors for them, and made great money then. Left teaching, but I was watching some of the things the company was doing, and they weren't keeping up with the times. The product got old, and today they no longer exist. They literally filed Chapter 11 and went away. And we watched, and you know, I started saying, if I do this again, I'm going to own the company. And we started preparing. I had an investor friend, a mentor, and we had talks about this. And like I say, I think you say it quite often, and it's true. You know, this didn't happen by chance, but by choice. We started preparing ourselves and knowing that when the right opportunity came, we'd already positioned some people and working towards what we wanted to do.
No, I like that. So take me back to the early days when you guys you're in Grand Rapids, Michigan, teacher, coach, you had success in direct sales, then all of a sudden some things happened to that company, you decided to start the company. Take me right to the beginning. You made the decision to start it. You said if I had to do it all over again, I was going to do it. How'd you start the company? Who's with you?
Well, interesting, because again, in preparing for it, you know, we had some key people, some that are still with me today, Doug Duty and Steve Radius, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, here's a picture of those of us. Pam, we've changed a little bit. We've changed. It was stylish back then to have a jacket that was 3 sizes too big for you. That was really in style. I'm glad, I don't know if Doug's here or not, but Doug, Dr. Noah's still right there, and Krista, Steve Radius, and you know, when we actually started Works, Larry there in the back was one of the investors, and we had one other guy. And we actually started Works, and the interesting thing is 2 of them aren't here today. And you know, I thought about that, and I'm thinking, same with Pam out in the field, working with some people, the group that started isn't here. And I think same thing happens here. I talked to some of our top leaders, and the person that sponsored them isn't in the business. And you're thinking, is that nuts?
Yeah.
And you know, if I told you, at one time I bought 24% of the company back. If I told you the amount, you'd be like, no way. But back then it wasn't worth anything. We weren't making any money, and it was a lot on faith. So we started with just a few of us.
I like that.
A lot of faith.
So you look at the company all the way back, even before this picture, you guys had 2 partners, 2 guys, you were looking at it, you and Cindy, and then you said, you know what, we're going to start putting this together. Who did I work with? You mentioned Steve, Doug, and we're going to get to the introductions of some other people here in a second. But I know everybody wants to know. That was one of my first questions. You know, somebody came up to me the day that we met in Dallas, Texas, and I asked them, they were owner of a magazine, and said, what do you know about It Works? I asked them that. And he said, I don't know anything, but if you could just get them to change their name. And I looked at him and I said, you just don't get it. You don't get it how magical that name is. But how'd you guys come up with that name?
We were sitting, I remember the morning, we were trying to come up with a name and looking at what other people had named their companies. And, you know, we've just always had this humor that's a little off the cuff. And we said, the name's got to be something that's fun.
Yeah.
and something that people would remember. And one of the funny things is when people would first use the products is, now I was a basketball coach, so you had referees. You couldn't be in the lane for more than 3 seconds. And I used to always laugh about the products because you could almost count 3 seconds and someone would go, if they work, does this work? If it works. And so we were laughing about that, and then we finally said, could we do it? Now we know people, someone's going to call it IT works, and someone's going to say, what if it doesn't work? And I'd say, well, we'd have to change the name of the company to it doesn't work instead of it works. So we just made it fun and decided we're going for it.
I love it. Cindy, let me go to you for a second here on the name. You know, it's a cool name. It's one of my most favorite things about the company is that it's a descriptor. You know, we're kind of planting a seed in people's mind even before they try the products that it's going to work. You know, great psychology back then. I don't know if it was, you know, part of the process, but it's fantastic. You know, when you started thinking, you know, hey, we're doing this company and the name It Works popped to mind, what kind of went through your process? It's like, this is cool. This actually could work.
Yeah, it really was. You never had to guess what they were going to say. When you told them about the wrap, they literally would go, if that works, and you'd go, it works. But you know, you just would have to, you gotta try it, but it works. And it just made sense. I mean, you're answering their question before they even ask it. And so it just made perfect sense.
I love it. You know, you think about the future. This is 15 years ago we're talking about these things were happening. They're still happening today. Imagine what's going to be 15 years from now. You know, the people, what's going to happen. I mean, that's what's getting me excited, guys. So let me dig into this picture a little bit. We got Tom Selleck in the middle here. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But so we think about, you mentioned Steve earlier, and you know, let's think back early days. You know, 15 years ago. You know, it's a long time. But so Steve was in the beginning. How did you guys get together?
Well, I had met Steve in an earlier company I was in, and we weren't same downlines or anything, but we'd met each other. And Steve had said, you know, when you do a company, when you do something, I want to be a part. So I own some office buildings, and Steve actually was helping manage those. And when we first hired Steve and Laurel, we hired Steve, but we got Laurel too. So she would come in and help out and be a big part of our company too. And you know, it didn't go. I'm a real believer that you don't spend your investment money on salaries and stuff. So, you know, we never had big salaries, and we'll talk more about that, how we paid ourselves in the beginning in a moment here. But Steve's salary after the first couple of years, I couldn't pay it. And I was going to talk to him about, I was just going to have to let it go because we couldn't do it. And Steve had 2 sons with MPS. And a local businessman came to me and said, let's keep Steve working. He said, I'll pay half the salary if you can pay half. And so we did that for next year, maybe 2 years, I can't remember, until we were on our feet, could really do that ourselves. And so that was special. And then Doug was working full-time teaching still. And he would leave teaching about 3 in the afternoon, take about an hour to drive up to where the office was, and then he'd put in 5-6 hours. And he did that for, you know, to me it felt like a couple of years. I asked him the other day, he said it was like 4 or 5 years, so I didn't realize that. And one year, he could take a 1-year sabbatical. I said, Doug, we're ready. We're ready. This company's ready to explode. Let's take that year sabbatical, and I guarantee you your salary. And he said, all right, let's do that. And we weren't ready to go yet. And so we actually bought an old house. And in the afternoons, Doug had the skill set with a couple people. They would go work on the house. And we flipped the house. That's how we paid the salaries that year.
Wow. You think about this. By the way, those of you that are newer, Steve's a gentleman in the tie. So you can see him up here.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's still here today.
He drives the Jeep.
Steve's right there. He has the It Works Jeep. And the ravishing young man in the very tight sweater on the right, that is Doug Dooney. He's our Chief Procurement Officer. And Doug's just an amazing guy. And I know if he was here, he'd love to stand and get the microphone and speak for 3 hours. We won't force him to do that today. You know, I think, Mark and Cindy, when you look at where we're at today, those philosophies that you had, not taking the investment money of the company and paying salaries and going above and beyond to make it work. you know, we say it worked, but you made the company work. God's blessings, and you took advantage of it, and you flipped houses.
Yeah.
You took second mortgage on the house. You did a lot of things to get the company where it's at today, and that's just, you know, those of you that think where we're going, that's the kind of mentality that we have going into the future when we do things, because we know that we want this to be around not only another 15 years, but another 50 years for you and your kids. And know that that's the kind of company you got behind you. At some point, you met this crazy lady named Pam the Queen Souter. How in the world did you all get together?
Well, you know, there's two stories here. We'll give both of them today, but we got corporate side, we got the field side, and it'll be fun to talk on the field side. But Pam was, you know, we don't talk about it very much, but there's actually 4. So that came, and one of the guys had been in our downlines in a different company, and Pam and I had been in the same company I got in the beginning, but we really hadn't met. But through this guy, I actually did a meeting in Roanoke, and that was the first time I met Pam. And liked her energy, liked that she was hungry. You know, she was, I think we rode to a meeting, away from the meeting together or something, but I thought, boy, she's hungry. And they called me, and I think they were more interested maybe in selling the product or something. I don't know at the time, but, you know, we just said that, you know, we're not doing something unless we own the company and what we're doing. And so, you know, think about that. There were 4. Today, there could be 4 queens of It Works, but there's not. There's only 1.
Woo!
She stayed the task, and you know, just like many of you, you'll come in with a group, and you're all going to go to Ambassador or Black Diamond, and all of a sudden you're the only one left standing a month later. And you know, it wasn't easy then. You know, Pam come in, and she believed in the product. She was excited about the product, and you know, I have, if you talk to any of our staff, I have a tendency to kind of test people or kind of put it out there of you know, come with us and work hard, and rewards can be big, but we didn't pay big salaries, and we just were taken from the comp plan. We said, be at the top, get paid by the comp plan. And I can't tell you how many times that Pam and I had calls in the beginning of, what am I going to say to Dave? And I'm trying to run a company. I go, I don't know, that's your husband. You tell him that we only made $400 this month, and we're traveling all over the world, you know, trying to get this going. And but you know, I always admire and greatly, you know, people ask me, like with the other 2 guys that started with It Works, if they knew we're a $1 billion company, they'd be here. And I don't know if they would be. Different things happen in life, and they go different directions. I think there were 4. What if they realized they could have been on the stage today, and yet there was only one that through the tough times, you know, there was a lot of nights that Pam and I would have conversations of her coming back from some state that she was doing parties, and maybe there was one person or nobody, and we would just have to encourage each other to stay in the game, and we actually made an agreement that if we had things happening at the office that wasn't good, I wouldn't tell her, because, you know, she had to go into the meeting that night and give the story of It Works. And so I think just knowing there could have been 4 queens, there's only 1 queen.
I like
And
it.
it's improved.
I like it. You look at the humble beginnings, you come in and, you know, have the corporate team working away, you've got Pam in the field, and you got this crazy rap thing. You know, and the formulator of this crazy rap thing, Luis Maharas come along, and those of you that have never heard Luis, it's fantastic. You know, I love, Pam always says he pronounces his words funny, and it's always great to hear this, but Luis is a great guy. How'd you and Luis get together?
Well, this guy was a product, kind of a product, introducing product to different people, and that's who it
Like a broker or something?
Yeah, a broker, and it introduced Pam and their group there. And so he's going to take me down to Mexico. And he took Larry and I can't remember if Steve was on that trip or not, but I know Larry and I was on that trip. And the funny thing is, Larry was a football coach, so he's kind of a big guy, and myself and this other guy, and we all had luggage, and Luis picks us up, and it's like a Volkswagen. And there was no trunk or anything for it, so we're in this little car with our luggage on our laps. And I'm kind of like, all right, this guy's the CEO of this company, and we'll see how this goes. But, you know, we just hit it off, and really interesting because we've become really good friends. And we did everything on a handshake back then. And both of us, Luis had a time where he had a choice to make. If he was going to